Hello guys, welcome back to the video. Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I'm going to be reviewing the Apple Studio Display. Now, Apple has originally released the Studio Display about 2 years ago with the release of Mac Studio. And I've been using the Studio Display for about 2 years now. And I'm going to be giving a quick review of the monitor and whether you should still buy it as an additional accessory for your Mac. So let's begin. Okay, so let's briefly talk about the design. Now, if you've been on my channel long enough, you know that I have had an LG Ultrafine 5K display before, and I've actually started using it again as a second monitor alongside my Studio Display for a dual monitor setup running off my M1 Max MacBook Pro. Now, the Studio Display is designed in plain, simple Apple way is great. You have this nice aluminum body all around the display, and it certainly feels way more premium than the LG Ultrafine 5K I've had before, which had plastic all around the display and it just felt cheap. But then again, that is also a monitor that costs significantly less than the Studio Display. Now with the Studio Display, you have two options to select from. First of all, you can configure your stand. You have the standard stand, which is only tilt adjustable. Then you have the tilt and height adjustable stand, as well as a VESA mount. Now I have the tilt and height adjustable stand just because I like to have the availability to adjust my monitor's height. But it is quite a significant step up to upgrade to the tilt and height adjustable stand. Another option you can pick out is between the standard glass or the nano texture. Now the nano texture I believe costs an extra £200, and I think it is an option definitely worth having if you're in a bright environment where you have maybe lots of daylight coming in during the day, or you're just surrounded by studio lights like my room is. And B, if you want less eye strain. Now, when I was comparing the Studio Display at the Apple Store between the standard glass and the nano texture, I have noticed that the nano texture is definitely softer on my eyes, which might be useful for those people who may, spend a lot of time on their computers for a long time. Also, the nano texture definitely is a tiny tad bit less sharper. That is actually an important aspect to consider. If you do want the sharpest display, avoid the nano texture. Albeit the differences are small, but it is definitely noticeable. So yeah, the nano texture definitely has advantages with deflecting glare, which it does a really good job of, as well as just being softer on your eyes. Well, that's what I found in my opinion. If you're not sure about between the nano texture and the standard glass, definitely visit your local Apple store so you can see for yourself which one will suit more for you. Now, about the display panel itself, it is still the same known 5K panel, 5120 by 2880 resolution, 218 pixels per inch. It is an LCD panel rated at 600 nits of brightness, only 60 Hz of refresh rate, and it supports Apple's True Tone technology. Oh, by the way, it's 27 inches. I forgot to mention that. Now, Apple has been making this panel for about 5 years to 10 years now, since the release of the original 5K iMac. They have just been updating it ever so slightly as the years went by. Honestly, today, this is still a great display. Now, I do have some caveats with it. First of all, at this price point, it would have been nice to get standard promotion from it, 120 Hz, just like we get with the iPad Pros and the new MacBook Pros. And also the fact that it's LCD. It would have been nice to see Mini LED already in 2024. Now, I know this came out back in 22. But even back in 22, it would have been nice to see Mini LED on a display this expensive. Albeit, I know that Apple probably reserves this option for the 6K Pro Display XDR, so that's why we're only stuck with LCD. Nevertheless, this is still a nice display panel. It is great for watching movies. It is bright, great for video editing, photo editing. It has Apple's P3 color gamut, but you have tons of other settings to choose from their color profile settings. It's just a nice, sharp display panel. Obviously, being an LCD panel, the only really disadvantage is you're not going to get deep blacks if you're watching movies. And colors obviously are definitely more muted compared to something like a Mini LED panel or an OLED panel. But unfortunately, LCD is something we're stuck with at the moment. Now, I don't really mind, to be honest, with LCD because I don't really use the Studio Display to watch movies. I just use it for productivity purposes to enhance my productivity with my MacBook Pro. The really bigger caveat, as I mentioned, is the fact that we still get 60 Hz of refresh rate. I think it's a bit of a bummer. It would have been nice to get promotion, but Apple being Apple, obviously they limit this option, maybe for potential upgrades anytime soon for the Studio Display. Another real caveat would have been, I guess, if the Studio Display did have 120 Hz of ProMotion, is the lack of an HDMI port. I really want to plug in my PS5 to this monitor and use it to play games, but I can't. Instead, I have to plug in my PS5 directly to my MacBook Pro and use an Elgato Cam Link in order to stream it through that device to the Elgato Game Capture software on the Mac so I can actually play games, which is just a bit of a hassle. It would have been nice if Apple actually added HDMI port to this display so I can use other devices with it, not just my Mac. Now, I know Apple doesn't really like to go outside of their ecosystem, which is probably why they didn't give it an HDMI port, but I think at this price point, it's a bit of a bummer that they don't give us an HDMI port. Now, other features to note though, the Studio Display has a 12 megapixel webcam, which also supports center stage thanks to Apple's A13 Bionic chip from the iPhone 11 Pro that is found inside the Studio Display. It also has studio quality mics, Apple claims, and this is what they sound like. This is the test of the Studio Display's webcam as well as the microphones, the studio quality mics on the Studio Display. Now, as you can see, there is quite a bit of noise on my hair. Now, that's because we're in a bright and dark environment, but in a light environment, the webcam is pretty good. It's pretty vibrant, has obviously support for center stage, although it's not active right now. Usually tends to be active for video calls. But yeah, other than that, webcam's great. That's all you really need. And at the back, we get 3 USB-C ports and a Thunderbolt 3 port for connecting your Mac to the display. Now, at the top, you will also notice grills that look like speaker grills. These are not speaker grills. These are air vents for the fans. Yes, the Studio Display does have fans in it for cooling that A13 Bionic chip. But honestly, you never hear them running. I have never heard the fans running in that display. So they're practically silent. And yeah, I mean, other than that, the Studio Display, albeit it's been out for 2 years now, and with no potential rumors for an upgrade, this is probably a product that Apple will continue selling for the next maybe 2-3 years, give or take, by the time they actually release a successor to it. If you remember, about 10 to 15 years ago, Apple has released the Cinema Display. That display was really high regarded. It was desired by a lot of people. So much so that a lot of people have continued using that display, even though the competition has started rolling out, displays with higher resolution compared to what the Cinema Display had at the time. But so many people liked it because of its, colors or other aspects. The fact that it tied in really nicely with the Apple ecosystem. And I'm sure there are a couple of people who may have used them even today. But obviously, Apple has released a successor now to the Cinema Display, the Apple Studio Display, as well as the Pro Display XDR. And I think this is a product that is definitely going to be on Apple's product lineup for a long time before they release a successor. For the simple reason being that there really isn't anything better than it. In fact, there isn't really anything like it at all on the market. You will rarely find a monitor that has 5K resolution that provides all these, features that this display does, with the great sounding speakers, the studio quality mics, the center stage webcam, the nice build. They're practically this display has no competition practically. Yes, there's maybe LG, Samsung releasing monitors with maybe less resolution but more refresh rate. But for Mac users who do wish they could game on it, like myself, we don't really need that. We just want a nice, simple, high-quality display to use for our productivity tasks, such as, for myself, it's video editing, photo editing, and just my general tasks in general, just to expand my productivity from my 14-inch MacBook Pro to this amazing 27-inch display. And the Studio Display does a great job at that, and that's why, I think Apple will continue selling this monitor for a long time before they release a successor. It's crazy that this LCD panel is already like 5 to 10 years. Yes, it's probably slightly different, slightly new, slightly upgraded, but ultimately, fundamentally, it's still the same 5K panel. It just shows how far Apple was ahead back then when they released the original 27-inch 5K iMac. So yeah, overall, the Studio Display, Yes, it starts at a hefty price of $12.99. If you want a more budget option, you have the LG Ultrafine 5K display, which you can find at good prices of around like £700 ish. So you do have the option to go cheaper, but you do lose out on the nicer build, the more modern, the better speakers, the better webcam, and as well as this display panel itself. All the LG is just not as nice as on the studio display. Plus, you do lose a bit of brightness, just because the panel on the LGs are older than the ones found on the studio display. And of course, if you want to go even further, you have the 6K 32-inch Pro Display XDR, which has mini LED, but still stuck at 60 Hz, funnily enough. So yeah, overall, the Apple Studio Display is a fantastic monitor for a Mac user. It would have been nice to see maybe an HDMI port. That'll probably be my only caveat, my only disadvantage of this display. But other than that, it is a great display for a Mac user. That's been it, guys. Thank you for watching. I'll see you again in the next video.